There is no hiding it. The Nationals have had a very slow offseason as of right now, but some people out there may think it's not that bad and that this could be par for course. What do you think? We'll have Bobby answer that after this.
You are Locked On Nationals, your daily Washington Nationals podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thank you all for making Locked On Nationals your first listen every single day, as we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And I am your host, Ryan Clary. We are a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're to our team every single day. And later on in today's program, just kind of getting into the Nationals offseason, looking at it as a whole. Will there be more moves on the trade market? Maybe signing a free agent or two. We'll have that for you later on in the show today. And in the second segment, Bobby and I will talk about MacKenzie Gore. And yes, the story of the offseason has been, will the Washington Nationals trade him? At this point, I'm leaning towards no, but we'll get Bobby's answer later on in the show today. But as we said, we are joined by Bobby Blanco from NASNsports.com. And Bobby, the Nationals are up to a slow start, man. I gotta know what else to say. What do you think?
Slow start. We're past the halfway point. Spring training is a month from today. So it's not a slow start. It's just been slow. I mean, I think you can make the argument that there was some movement in December, a month ago, right after the winter meetings, or maybe even including the winter meetings. Like, things did happen. The Nationals have made moves. It's just not maybe the biggest, most sexy moves that, some fans want to see their team making. We're not going out and getting a Bregman. They're not going out and getting, a frontline starting pitcher or the best closer on the market. But they have made moves. I mean, they traded Jose A. Ferrer. They made a minor league trade, which for those of us who cover the minor league system for the Nationals, was a pretty big deal. They brought in another, highly regarded pitcher for one of their top pitching prospects, which was an interesting move. They filled out a whole new front office. They filled out a whole new coaching staff, a bunch of young studs coming in to lead this organization, which is a gamble in and of itself. And it's definitely going to be something interesting to watch as we move forward, not only this year, but the next couple of years. And they've signed a handful of interesting, minor league guys and other guys to fill out the roster. So again, it's not a slow start. It's been a slow off season as we get kind of near the end of it, which is kind of crazy, but they've been doing things. They've been active. It's just not the big eye popping, sexy moves that probably a lot of fans want to see them move or see them make. And I just think that, Paul Toboni's been on the job for 4 months, 5 maybe. There's a lot to do. He wants to completely overhaul this entire operation. I think that's why you have like a Mike DeBartolo and you hire an Ani Kalambi to be your GM. They are the ones kind of handling, I would imagine, the day-to-day operation of the major league roster, while Paul Toboni is looking at the big picture and the grand scheme of things and completely turning this franchise upside down. We saw reports earlier this week that the Nationals have actually invested a lot into their player development side of the operation. New technology, that hitting machine that everyone got all pissed off about last summer that the Nationals didn't have. That they finally have them. They're going to have this like quote unquote like. It's basically the equivalent of an NFL rookie mini camp in the next couple of days for some of their top young prospects to kind of start getting ready for the season and get used to the way that Toboni, Kalambi, all of these guys in the front office want to develop players. And we've seen them have success elsewhere in this process. So to say that it's been slow, that's fair, but they have been doing things both on and off the field, which I think will pay dividends in the long run. I think we have to take a step back and just realize what this team is going to have to be again this year. I know a lot of fans do not want to hear that, but unfortunately, to get to where they want to be, that's probably going to have to be the case for 2026.
Yeah, and honestly, you're right in that sense. Going into this offseason, I don't think anybody with their head on straight was like, oh yeah, the Nationals are going out there and sign Alex Bregman. They're going to trade MacKenzie Gore for a massive, massive haul that's going to change everything in this organization. Like, those were unrealistic expectations. So I never thought that they would go after a Bregman. I never thought that they'd go after a Dylan Cease. Kind of what I'm thinking of, though, and this is just maybe my philosophy if I were a GM, like, they're missing that middle tier kind of guy. And what does that look like? Does it look like a Fairbanks? Maybe. Does it look like, a solid reliever out there, like a Kyle Finnegan that you bring back? Like, I think something in that category is what the Nationals are missing. And I feel as if you are in a rebuild, like, this is just my philosophy, Bobby, and this is just how I would do things. I would be signing relievers every day. I would sign a veteran reliever who has been there, who has done that. I would get a veteran reliever who's coming off a great year. I'd get a veteran reliever that is coming off a bad year. And hopefully you come in here and you pitch really well for the first half and you try to trade that said guy. And I think that if you are the Nationals out there, that obviously could be coming because the reliever market's always kind of weird. There's always some guys right before spring training and even during that spring training process where you can get who will have bounce back years, who will play some big roles on this team. And I think the Nationals could still easily do that. But the fact is that they just haven't done it. And like, again, maybe I'm just an angry podcaster out here being like, hey man, like, make some trades, make some moves, like, get me something to talk about here. But also, just as a Nationals fan and looking at this, piece together a bullpen, this is what the Nationals should be doing. And they should be going out there and citing that middle tier category. And so I see some people out there, dunking on the learner saying like, oh, well, they're still cheap and they're doing all this and they're not going to spend in free agency. And it's like, well, let's hold back right now. This is year one of Paul Toboni and Ani Colombi. And I think that both those guys are really good executives. I think they've got bright futures in this game. But also, you got to spend some money. And it feels as if they've done everything right. But the big question down the line is, will they spend in free agency? And not just on an Alex Bregman, but on that Pete Alonso, Rhys Hoskins, like whatever tier you want to talk about is, will you finally get that free agency check that we've all wanted for years?
Yeah. And, I think with your point towards the bullpen, it makes a lot of sense. And, that was kind of how Rizzo operated. I'm not saying that Tony's not going to operate that way because he's doing everything. I mean, that's just a lot of teams operate that way in terms of you kind of wait till the last minute to get relief help. I mean, think about the Derek Law a couple of years ago, who I think signed during spring training and then was one of the best relievers in baseball, that year. And definitely for the Nationals, he pitched an incredible amount of innings and it was really successful. So like, I think teams kind of wait on bullpen help because when the top guy signed, right? Like, your Edwin Diaz's, your Raciel Iglesias's, they've all, are off the board just because they're the top guys. You fill out your bullpen with the middle tier guys that, are right now starting to think of, okay, I need to get the ball rolling. I need to know where my family is going to live. I need to know where I'm going to be in a month. Like, that's where we start seeing, I think, relievers come off the board. And you see a lot of minor league deals with an invite to spring training. And it's like, hey, we know you have experience, but I mean, I think that's going to do a handful of these between now and the start of camp. Like you're going to see them sign a lot of veteran, older relievers to minor league deals with the invite to spring training. Like, hey, we know you have experience. Where our team is at right now, we're focusing on the young guys. But if you come into camp and prove you deserve to be on the team, you'll make the team and you'll get a major league contract and you'll be an important piece for us. I thought it was interesting. You also mentioned Pete Alonso because I think first base is the next biggest issue for the Nationals on this roster. They've got young talent everywhere else on the field. You bring in a Harry Ford to be competition behind the plate. Obviously you have CJ Abrams at shortstop, Brady House still at third, Luis Garcia Jr. What's going to happen with him at second? Then a plethora of outfielders, young outfielders. So you're set pretty much everywhere else on the infield except for first base. Now, does Matt Mervis, the local guy from Prep, come in and on a minor league deal and compete for that job? Probably. Is he good enough to be your opening day starter at first base? To be determined. There are still a handful of guys with a little more experience and a little more of a longer resume that you could look at and be like, well, why don't the Nationals go after a Luis Ariz, or, see if Paul Goldschmidt wants to get one more shot at it, or Rhys Hoskins, like you mentioned. So
those actually aren't bad ideas. The Goldie, I would actually kind of like. I think it's not a bad idea.
He had almost 2 WAR last year, and he's only 30. He's going to be 38 this year. I mean, you're looking at a guy at the twilight of his career. Why not come here? Hopefully have a really good start to the season and get traded to a contender and try to go get a ring before you retire. I don't know. But so your point makes total sense. And I think that it's fair criticism to be like, hey, the current roster is not good enough right now. Like, you don't have a first baseman. You don't have a sure thing lockdown closer. The rotation has question marks. So what are we doing here? And I think that's fair, but I think there's also some time left, and the way the Nationals are going to operate that, or they're going to let other chips fall, and then they're going to kind of pick from the scraps and hope to turn something into, something out of nothing.
Yeah. And you know what? Like, Paul Goldschmidt could win a World Series here this year too. Like, I think that's something that could happen.
Paul Goldschmidt win a World Series in DC this year?
That's my prediction. You never know. You never know. You never know, Bobby. You never know. All right. Well, next, I want to get into this with you, Bobby. MacKenzie Gore. I don't know where you stood on him before this offseason, but I was like, yeah, he's going to get traded. 110% would be traded. It is January 13th, and the Nationals have not traded him. I don't think they're going to trade him anymore, but I want to know what you think, and I'll get your answer after this. And the wild card round is here, and FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. Every game day during the NFL playoffs, FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action, because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app. And each game day, you'll see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts that you can apply to bets that you like the most. You can open your profit boost pack first thing on game day and see what boosts you want to apply. And the boosts let you lean into your game day instincts, whether you're backing momentum, defense, quarterback play, or even coaching. And the boosts give you more juice on bets that you already like instead of forcing you to bet something new. And every play just feels bigger, and the boosts make your best bets feel that way as well. So visit FanDuel.com, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day with our friends at FanDuel.com. We're back here on Locked On Nationals with our guy, Bobby Blanco from MASNsports.com. Bobby, MacKenzie Gore. I mean, this has been the big talk of the offseason. I'm not entirely sure where you were at. I'm sure we talked about it. MacKenzie Gore trade before the offseason even started, but I thought that he was going to be traded, and now I feel as if that the Nationals will not trade him at this point, and they're probably going to wait for this year's deadline or maybe in this next offseason. I don't know at this point, but I can just tell you this. I feel as if they hold on to him and see what he does in the first half. So just where were you at before the offseason, and where are you at now with the MacKenzie Gore trade?
Yeah, I think we talked about it whenever we chatted right at the beginning of the offseason. And that obviously was a big conversation heading into right after the end of the regular season, after the end of the playoffs. People were speculating that MacKenzie Gore was on his way out. I believe my thought was I could see it, but I don't anticipate it. Like, I wouldn't surprise me if they did decide to move him, but I didn't honestly think that they would get what Paul Toboni would ask for, and we've seen that come out recently in some of the reporting recent about the trade market. And, I think the quote was like, the Nats are asking the world for MacKenzie Gore, which they should. Like, he's probably the most valuable starting pitcher on the trade market outside of Skubal. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, just because of his potential, because of his years left under control. And I think that, well, one thing, I think overall we've seen the trade market slow down, right? And that kind of ties back to what we were just talking about like waiting for other chips to fall. I think we're going to see teams would rather sign free agents than give up something for another player, right? Like, they would rather just go in an ideal world for any, baseball executive, you can just go give whatever player you want a blank check instead of having to give up a handful of your top prospects to go get another player that will come back cheap. Cheap being, in quotation marks, because MacKenzie's gonna. I think he made like $5 million in arbitration.
Yeah, around that.
Yeah. So you're not paying him a lot over the next couple of years, but then he's going to command a big contract once he hits free agency. Anyways, long story short being, I think that, yes, it has definitely cooled off. At this point, I would be surprised if they flipped him. Because I just don't see a team now, getting desperate and being like, all right, fine, go get Gore, give him our top 5 prospects and let's move on. I just don't see that happening right now in January and right before spring training. I think you could see him being flipped at the deadline, kind of like a Juan Soto kind of move, ironically enough, because if he has a strong first half and you get a team out there who is desperate or is just like, hey, we need long-term starting pitching depth for the next 2-3 playoff runs, go get MacKenzie Gore and give up our top 3 and a major leaguer for him. I think that's more likely at this point than him being traded before spring training starts.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of where I'm at as well. But even then, here's my thing, Bobby. I got a couple different things I want to say that you can react to here.
Sure.
I've always liked MacKenzie Gore. I think MacKenzie Gore is a very good pitcher, but I also think, I don't want to say he's overrated. I think that's a lazy thing to say, but I think we may overvalue him in a sense. And I think that Nationals fans, we've been deprived of a lot of talent the past few years, and that's what happens when you're in a rebuild. But I think people look at MacKenzie Gore, and he's by far and away our best pitcher. He's got all-star potential. He's a great arm with great stuff, electric stuff. I think he's a top 10 lefty in baseball. But also, I think people may overvalue him. And I think, in a sense, the expectations of the trades coming out, it felt as if the Nationals were to move him, that the trade and the haul coming back here might underwhelm some people here. And I think maybe the Nationals may think the same thing of hey, we value this guy. He is by far and away our number 1 pitcher. And if you get rid of MacKenzie Gore, this rotation is a mess. I mean, it just is. So You look at that and you're like, okay, well, maybe Toboni has his price tag in mind. And he's like, we're not going to budge on this. And maybe in their minds, obviously with all the player development backgrounds, they think that they could maybe develop him and kick in that extra gear that everyone's always talked about with Gore. And he kind of had that this past year. I fell off a little bit in the summer months, kind of what he has done the last few years here. But maybe the Nationals think that they could actually raise his value. And if he does have a massive first half here, then maybe that price tag goes up a little bit, and maybe teams do get more desperate. And the Tigers, let's say they hold on to Skubal, and who knows who else could come available via trade here. But maybe that's just what the Nationals are thinking. And maybe they think that they could develop him, make him a better pitcher, and therefore make him a better trade guy, trade bait at that point in the deadline. Yeah. You get what I'm saying? I think that the Nationals feel confident in their abilities to kind of tap into that next year with him.
I think a lot of how you and I fans value MacKenzie Gore, a lot of it is based on his potential, right? We keep saying that his potential is so good. He has his ceiling so high. He's got ace-like stuff. If you could just put it all together, he'd be one of the top pitchers in the league. We haven't seen that in 3 years, or 3.5, if you want to include his rookie season with the Padres. He's pitched to an ERA around 4 each of those 3 years. He's only made 30 plus starts twice. He's only gone over 160 innings once. So I know starting pitchers don't pitch that deep into games anymore, but anyone who's watched MacKenzie Gore as frequently as we have, we know all right, you get to that second time of the order in the 4th, 5th inning, that's where it gets dicey, right? If he gets out of it, all right, maybe he goes 7 or 8, but if he doesn't, he might not even get through 4 tonight. He's very inconsistent. And I think you're right. I think, baseball people in the industry and GMs around the league probably value him differently than we see him, because they look at the underlying metrics and be like, this guy barely gets out of the 4th inning in the second half. This guy has been hurt for the first time in his career at the end of last season. Is that going to be a lingering issue? I don't think so, but these are questions that I'm sure GMs are asking themselves. And to your other point, I think Paul Toboni, I keep going back to his introductory press conference. Ryan, you were there. The quote he said of we believe that there's another gear to tap into with a lot of these young players. I think he was specifically in terms of pitching talking about MacKenzie Gore. And I don't think he'll come out and say that, but I think he's talking about MacKenzie Gore, James Wood, Dylan Cruz, and CJ Abrams. I think those are the 4 guys he had in mind when he said that quote. And I would be so interested and so curious to see MacKenzie Gore in a full year being in this new player development system under Paul Toboni, Alani Kalambi, guys who have proven not just to develop players at the major league level, but to develop pitchers, guys who have good track records with pitchers. I think that this could finally be the year we see MacKenzie Gore take off. And like you said to your last point, that might make him the most valuable come the deadline because they could be showing off. Look what we turned him into what he's supposed to be. Now come and get him and pay a high premium for him. And that might cause teams to be like, okay, there it is. That's what we were looking for. Let's go get this guy and give up, a huge haul for him. So I think that's why I lean more towards he's more likely to be traded at the deadline or next offseason than between now and start of spring training.
If there is an offseason next year, because we all know, and I also seriously, I wonder how that kind of plays into this. And maybe I think we just don't know. We feel as if that this lockout is going to last a long time. Mm-hmm. And we don't really know how executives with guys who are on expiring deals after 2027, what if they only play 40 games? I don't know. I'm just throwing a number out there, but it's going to be crazy. And I think that a lot of people don't really know what to expect with that. And maybe that kind of goes into it. But also, I've just kind of had this feeling for a while now with this Tarek Skubal stuff. And I don't know if you saw the arbitration number. Did you see that they're $13 million apart, the Tigers and Skubal?
That's insane.
I mean, there is something. I've had this feeling that for the past few months now, there's something behind the scenes happening. And I think now it's out in public that oh my God, the Tigers are sending a message, a stupid one, I will say, with the best pitcher in baseball. And, maybe Scott Boras is trying to send a message as well, but that's going to be ugly. Obviously, they're very far apart. I've got a feeling that Skubal wants out. I think that this is going to be very public. And I think maybe the thing that's been holding a MacKenzie Gore trade back is executives that would go after a MacKenzie Gore would also be we'll take the best left-handed pitcher in all of baseball and the best pitcher in baseball with Tarek Skubal. Yeah. So they've probably been waiting behind the scenes to see what's happening there as well. So I think there's a lot of moving parts with why MacKenzie Gore hasn't been traded yet. But MacKenzie Gore was not just the only trade rumor this offseason. The next one was CJ Abrams. And I've had a hard stance. I do not want to trade CJ down, but I do want to talk about that with you, Bobby. And we'll get into that after this. Bobby, we are back here on Locked On Nationals. Just talked about MacKenzie Gore stuff. Do just kind of want to get into an offseason look with CJ Abrams and kind of where you're at with him. Do you see the Nationals trying to move off of Abrams eventually, or just kind of where are you at with CJ?
Yeah, I've kind of have a similar stance to you. I always thought if the Nats were going to make a big trade, it would be MacKenzie and CJ would stay put. It's hard to determine CJ's value right now. It's kind of the same thing we were just talking about with MacKenzie, right? It's I think us locally and fans probably see him as such a valuable trade piece, again, based off of his potential, not based on what he's actually done. I mean, he had a solid season last year. He was an all-star 2 years ago. He's had 3 straight years of a WAR over 3.4 with the Nats per Baseball Reference. He led the Nats. He was second in the Nats in WAR this past year behind James. But still, I mean, that's
really good player.
That's a really good player. The defense has been iffy. I mean, he can make the spectacular throw, but he sometimes struggles with the basic throw. But we've seen when CJ's on a heater and he is locked in, he is one of the best, probably I would say one of the best leadoff hitters in the National League. Yep. Someone who you want leading off because of the speed that he has on the base path, because of his power potential. I think he either tied or broke the Nationals record for leadoff home runs this past year, breaking Trey Turner's record. And then just the speed he has, he can turn singles into doubles and doubles into triples, and he can go we've seen him go first to home and score a winning run on a single to the right field gap. So he's got a lot of value. I just think that, another player who we might value him a little more than other teams do, kind of the same idea. And I think that CJ is one where Paul Toboni looks at and says, all right, the trade value, even if we get him, really to reach his peak potential, he's under team control for one less year than MacKenzie is, I believe. And so, who that brings his value down to, who's going to go after, you're getting one less year, young shortstop. I don't know. I think the Nats will look at him as more of a corner piece. He's also not a Boris guy. So if you're Paul Toboni, you're looking at maybe we can lock him up long-term. If we can, another guy I really want to see him in this new player development department. But if they can unlock CJ Abrams, then I would say lock him down for the long term, because this guy has, I'm not saying MVP caliber stuff, but all-star level shortstop play is
easily
hard to come by.
Yeah, exactly. And I share that same sentiment with you, Bobby. I think that CJ, if you were to go into a lab and create the perfect baseball player, I'm not saying it's going to be CJ Abrams, but the traits that you look for is speed, power, athleticism. CJ's got all of that. He has got the potential to be a very, very, very good player. And I'm not going to say an MVP kind of guy, but if you look around baseball and the Ellie De La Cruzes of the world, it's that speed and power. And CJ is not on that level, but he's not that far from it. And I think that when we see him at his best ability, he's putting up some really good numbers, and it's about staying consistent for a 162 game slate. And I think that the Nationals, going back to what you mentioned about Toboni and what he said, and he was I feel as if that guys have another gear. That was for CJ Abrams, because I think we have seen it before, and we have seen it with guys like Gore. We've seen it with guys out there like Keeper Ruiz at times. I mean, you have seen it, but that comment in my mind was about CJ, and I've always believed in that. I've always been the one to say, unless the package is insane, then you can't turn down that trade. But if it's not going to reach that point, you hold on to a guy like that, because if you're looking around baseball, you want to have that marriage of speed, power, offensively speaking. I think he does have the potential to be okay defensively. He's got to clean up some of his just bad mistakes, for just being honest here. Mechanics are pretty sloppy at times. Maybe move him over to second base. And even then, if you move him over to second base, you take his numbers offensively now, and they just get even better over at second base compared to the other ones there. So I think CJ is a guy that I've been hard on this. You extend this guy, you build around him. I think he's very talented. I think you can tap into another gear with him. And I feel as if that he should be a part of this foundation. And this is, again, not a Scott Boras client. You should extend him, and that should be one of your top priorities. But we'll see ultimately what the Nationals decide to do. But Bobby, we are going to be wrapping up today's program. It's always a pleasure to talk with our guy, Bobby Blanco.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ryan.
Of course, man. And, a lot of baseball to be played this year, but we'll have it covered right here on Locked On Nationals. So that's Bobby Blanco from Masson Sports. I'm Ryan Clary from Locked On Nationals. I will catch you guys on the flip side. Have a good one. Go Nats.